Oh, hi everyone. We're going to introduce here the genetics and heredity unit. So what is heredity? Heredity is the passing of genetic information from one generation to the next through reproduction. The scientific study of heredity is called genetics. What do we already know about heredity, reproduction, and genes? Genes are segments of DNA that control specific traits in organisms. DNA is organized into structures called chromosomes. Body cells contain two of each kind of chromosome, one from each parent. This is the diploid number of chromosomes, or 2n. During the formation of gametes, sperm and eggs, the number of chromosomes is cut in half by the process of meiosis, so that each gamete contains only one of each type of chromosome. This is the haploid number of chromosomes, or n, or 1n. In humans, the diploid number of chromosomes is 46, which means that there are 23 pairs of homologous chromosomes in the nucleus of every human body cell. Half of the chromosomes in an offspring resulting from sexual reproduction, the union of egg and sperm, come from the mother, and half come from the father. Thus, the offspring inherits half of its genes from each parent. Since the parents are different from each other, the offspring is different from both parents. Each new offspring is the result of fertilization of a different egg by a different sperm, so that each offspring inherits a different combination of genes from its parents. Now, except for the case of identical twins. Oogenesis, which is the ovum formation. It's 100% of the gametes would contain X, but 0% of the gametes would contain Y. Spermatogenesis, or sperm formation, 50% of the sperm will contain X, and 50% of the sperm contain Y. So we have to say that the sperm actually decides the gender of the offspring, of the zygote. In order to predict the possible offspring that could be produced by a particular set of chromosomes, biologists use a simple diagram called a Punnett square. In this case, the 6 chromosomes of the possible male gametes are written on the left-hand side of the rows of the boxes, and the 6 chromosomes of the possible female gametes are written at the top of the column of boxes. Each box in the diagram represents a possible union of male and female gametes. In other words, offspring represents a possible combination. Label your notes using the following terms, or just take a look at the terms here and how they match up with the diagrams. You have mother and father, of course, X chromosome, Y chromosome, that's how they look, egg cells, sperm cells, female zygotes, male zygotes. Complete the following Punnett square to show determination. What percent is female, what percent is male? Here comes the female gametes XX, and the male gametes XY. So sperm contains an X or Y, X or Y. So what percent of the offspring are female? Okay, 50%. And what percent are male? 50%. Or what could be? This is, again, a possibility type of thing, or a probability type of thing. What are you expecting to see when you cross the female with the male in terms of the possibility of having a sperm either having an X or a Y? But females will always have an X no matter what in both situations. Okay, patterns of inheritance. The study of genetics as we know it today began with the work of an Austrian monk by the name of Gregor Mendel. Mendel performed a series of experiments on ordinary garden peas, Pisum sativum. He started with seeds, peas, that always produced plants having the same characteristics generation after generation. The plants grown from these seeds are referred to as a purebred, or simply pea generation. P stands for like parental generation or purebred, not P itself. Like others before him, Mendel noticed that when pure tall pea plants were cross-pollinated with pure short pea plants, all offspring were tall. Pure tall parent crossing with a pure short got 100% tall offspring. Since these offspring were the result of one tall parent plant and one short parent plant, they were no longer genetically pure. Now such plants are referred to as hybrid. What happened to the trait for short plants? The short plant was hidden and it's not expressed. Mendel found out that if two of the hybrid tall plants were crossed, short plants were expressed among some of the offspring in the next generation. So if you took a hybrid tall, crossed it with a hybrid tall, you had 75% tall offspring and 25% short offspring. Why was Mendel able to detect and explain patterns of heredity while previous researchers had failed? Unlike researchers before him, Mendel used an organized scientific approach. He detailed characteristics of pea plants in each generation. So he cultivated 30,000 plants. And plants are if you're working with plants, you want to actually work with a lot of them to get good data. So he followed traits through the generations. Mendel kept track of specific genetic traits. He was very meticulous with the plant height, tall versus short, flower color, white versus purple, seed color, green versus yellow, seed shape, brown versus wrinkled. He observed similar patterns of inheritance for all of these traits. Mendel never actually saw a gene or DNA. By careful observation and logic, he reasoned that traits are carried from one generation to the next by unchanging factors, and that organisms contain two factors for each trait, one from each parent. Mendel's work was largely ignored when it was first presented in 1865. Mendel's work was rediscovered in 1900. By this time, chromosomes had been stained and observed in cells, and the process of mitosis and meiosis had already been described in detail. At this point, biologists realized that chromosomes carry the hereditary factors referred to by Mendel in his research paper. In today's terms, Mendel's hereditary factors are called genes, and then the two versions of the gene that produce contrasting traits are called alleles. Based on 7 years of meticulous research and the accumulation of pages of data, Mendel developed three very important laws of genetics that still provide the foundation for modern genetics. 1, the law of dominance. 2, the law of segregation and recombination. And 3, the law of independent assortment. Again, laws are descriptions and theories are explanations. The law of dominance. When an organism is hybrid for a pair of contrasting traits, it shows only the dominant trait. The other trait remains hidden. The presence of an allele does not assure that it will be seen or have an effect. We say that a gene that is hidden is not expressed. The allele that is always expressed in a hybrid individual is called dominant. And the allele that is not expressed in a hybrid individual is called recessive. Example, if you have a plant that always produces white flowers and then it's crossed with a plant that always produces purple flowers, the resulting offspring are plants that produce only purple flowers. So what term is used to describe the genetic makeup of the parent plants? Pure or homozygous. Number 2, the offspring has an allele for purple flowers from one parent and an allele for white flowers from the other parent. What term is used to describe the genetic makeup of the offspring? Hybrid or heterozygous. Which trait is dominant? Is it white or purple? It's purple. Okay, the law of segregation. The law of segregation and recombination. Alleles are separated from each other during gamete formation and recombined at fertilization. During meiosis or gametogenesis, homologous chromosomes pair up during synapsis and then separate during disjunction. Each homologous chromosome carries one of the two alleles for that trait. In this way, alleles are separated and each gamete receives only one copy of each allele. Two alleles are for a given trait are later recombine during fertilization. And then they may be the same or they may be different. Okay, so just an illustration here that you might see some, might be seeing this on a question, like an EOC question. So segregation is gametogenesis. Primary sex cells at diploid, 2N. Now here's meiosis, sperm, 1N. And the same over here for oogenesis, where you have the egg and then, of course, 3 polar bodies that get absorbed, and you end up with 1 egg at hybrid, haploid, 1N. And then you combine the 2 and you get your zygote at 2N, which is diploid. Meiosis, again, equals segregation. Fertilization equals recombination. Which process results in segregation, separation of homologous chromosomes and the alleles they carry? It's called meiosis. What process results in the recombination, creating new combinations of homologous chromosomes and the alleles they carry to produce genetically different offspring? Fertilization. Important terms used in solving genetics problems. An individual that is pure or homozygous for a genetic trait has 2 identical alleles for that trait. Example, both alleles for tall. Another name for this is homozygous. An individual that is hybrid for a genetic trait has 2 different alleles for that trait, and we call that heterozygous. So if you were going to abbreviate it, the allele pairs, there's that notation you use for it's the letter of the dominant allele for that trait. So homozygous would be represented for capital B. Say we were talking about brown eyes versus blue eyes, so brown eye dominant over blue. Capital B is homozygous. This is homozygous recessive. This is homozygous dominant. So homozygous recessive would be represented by 2 lowercase b's. And heterozygous is represented by a capital letter and a lowercase letter, heterozygous or hybrid. The genetic makeup of an organism, whether it is homozygous or heterozygous, is referred to as a genotype. The outward physical appearance of an organism resulting from its genotype, whether it shows a dominant or recessive trait, is referred to as its phenotype. So in this picture, phenotype is the face, it's the physical appearance. The genotype is what's actually on the genes, whether it's homozygous dominant, heterozygous, or homozygous recessive. These are the phenotypes, the color of the eyes, and these are the genotypes, the lettering, the actual gene, the alleles, the forms of the gene they're on, the chromosomes. Okay, that's it. Have a good day.